And then we're both funny, dry, witty, brilliant, and
Modest,
humble.
modest.
Humble,
Yeah,
modest. There we go.
I love sprinkling that in. Yeah.
How are you doing?
Mm. I'm okay. I'm okay. I walked it. Oh, I got these carry-ons, so look at that. Dang.
Yeah, me too.
I had to carry. Well, you have thin. We've established this. You have thinner under eye skin than most.
Yeah.
It comes up often. I feel like you have to defend yourself a fair amount. If I Here's the thing. If I slip into any um what are going to feel like imitations, it is like a personality defect and talent that I have where if I'm in a certain if I went to school in Chicago, there were times you get a couple drinks in you and you start talking like one of the guys in the Saturday Night Live skit, oh yeah, Bears. Oh, the Bears look good this year. So if
Yeah.
I with you having heard you so many times on the way to and from work, if I do a couple, yeah, 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 yes. If I do if I do some of that, it is not. I'm not poking fun. It is just out of sort of osmosis.
That warms my heart. All I'm really looking from this interview is a friendship. I want like 9 months from now, I want your kids to walk by the fridge and be like, "Who are those people on that Christmas card?"
Dude. Okay, I'm a admitted late taker downer of Christmas stuff. I blame my kids, but I got this right next to the old. This little throw blanket still sitting right there. And I love collecting Christmas cards, so don't threaten me with a good time. I'll do that in a heartbeat.
But then maybe like the occasional text message too. I think you just called producer Matt, so I think we might have digits at this point.
I do well. I was a little worried, and we can. I don't know where if we want to get into the battle of Northern and Southern Virginia, but I was worried that a 434, which I haven't called in a long time, would see a 703 and be like, oh, this is a social security scam or whatever else. Like I feel like there's some decent scams that come out of that area code, but he picked right up, and I appreciate it because I don't want to start the friendship off on the wrong foot. I would have loved to have known that Greenlight decides not to do what most of the industrialized world does, which is communicate well with Apple products, even though I see a laptop right in front of me, because I'm just dialed in on Safari, and you guys are like, no, we need this. I'm an Oreo eater, and you guys are Hydrox, and that's fine. We just need to know how to communicate with. I'm Cheez-Its, you guys are Cheese Nips, and that's fine. We just need to know how to communicate. That's all.
Yeah, yeah. The way we record audio is not compatible with your Internet Explorer from the year 1992. And for that, we apologize.
If you
But
given
hey,
if you given me a heads up that I had to ask Jeeves to set this whole thing up, I would have done it. But not
hey,
so much.
um, all right, I want to set out some reasons for this friendship, why it might work. Now, opposites attract. I'm hoping this is not the case because we're similar in the following ways. Um, Vienna, Virginia, covered. I'm not a Northern Virginia cat, but
Yeah,
yes, Virginia, done,
Virginia.
check.
Yeah,
Tell me how tall a guy you are, Randy.
6'4".
Okay, me too. I want to circle back to that, but
Yeah,
ditto, same height.
like a legit. You can be barefoot walking into a 7-Eleven. You're 6'4".
I'll circle back right now. When I go to the doctor and I am measured,
Yeah.
it's 6'4", and it's not even without shoes on, and
Yes.
they're not. They're unequivocal about it. Like, and then it's the thing that comes down on top of your head, and then
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
you can get out and take a look yourself. But
Yeah.
the problem I have found with 6'4" is that, well, first somebody sees you and they're like, "Oh, you're tall. How tall are you?" And then you say 6'4", and then they're like, "Nah, no way." And
Yeah.
so it's an uncomfortable height to say. So I will sometimes say 6'3" because it just feels much more approachable for people. But in
Oh.
reality, 6'4". People see a tall person, you say 6'4", they want to say, "No, you're not that tall."
See what I run into. I thought you were going to go this way, especially all the time you spent around, the college basketball programs and athletes and whatever else. Is people
Programs.
expect you to be 6'4", and they do the whole man. If I were 6'4", I'd be in the fill in the blank, NBA, NFL, whatever. And for me in my high school in Vienna, I was the 4 on the basketball team. Like we were not, we'd roll into these DC tournaments and play against. I remember DeMatha
I
playing against
knew
like
you were going to say DeMatha.
I mean, well, we didn't make it far enough to play against Bishop Carroll or whatever, and a good counsel or whatever. But we played DeMatha and Keith Bogans and Joe Forte are running around, and their 4 and 5s are, 6'9", 6'10", going to Kentucky, and we're getting baptized every time down the floor. I got out of the way of a dunk once. I didn't know what was happening. It was like, I really don't have an analogy. I need more of this coffee, but like, and maybe, you know what? We can actually talk about coffee now that your overlord's halfway around the world. But
Yeah.
I got dunked on, and I was just trying to get out of the way. Like, I realized the lob too late, and I was just trying to get out of the way. And this guy thought I was trying to undercut him, and I almost got my head taken off. Like, it was bad. So I say all that to say, like, 6'4", sometimes people expect a higher level of athletic ability, and you're like, no, man, I wear makeup 4 days a week.
Yeah. Well, now there it is. Now in the pickup games, I have to guard the 5, and great instincts guarding like a big cat who's pushing 275. Like I know where you're headed. I can hold my own, but it's still uncomfortable because we're the tallest guys doesn't mean we've got the girth, the bulk.
Right. Yeah. I applaud you out there playing. I mean, I know I'm a couple of years older than you. I'm probably what are you, 36?
I'm 36.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm
36.
round 40. I turned 40 this last year.
Okay. We're both really in touch with our emotions. We are sensitive guys, okay?
For sure.
We can check that box. Our faces are not dissimilar. And I don't mean that as an insult to you. I don't have the greatest face.
No, none taken.
The under eye thing we've covered.
Yeah.
Our eyebrows, we kind of got similar eyebrows.
Are you Scottish? You got any Scottish blood in you? Because
couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Couldn't tell you. I'm really like a in the present moment sort of guy. I'm never really backward looking, but maybe.
So I'm wondering. Yeah, and don't do the whole DNA farm, 23andMe thing. Like, I don't know where that stuff goes, but I know some people end up in jail because of it.
Yeah.
But I know my mom did something a couple years before she passed, and it was pretty much like mainly Scottish on her side, mainly Irish on my dad's side. So this is apparently Scottish. These Sandy Cohen from the OC eyebrows that I've got.
Yeah. And then we're both funny, dry, witty, brilliant, and humble.
Modest.
Modest. There we go.
I love sprinkling that in. Yeah.
So and I left out the biggest thing. We both really, I hope this is true for you. We both really want to be SportsCenter anchors, or at least we really wanted to be at some point SportsCenter anchors.
Yeah. That's true.
Listen to this. I would stay home from school sick, and I'd start whenever the first SportsCenter aired. I probably wasn't awake at that point, but whenever I watched in the first SportsCenter, and they just replayed them over and over. We weren't really live at this point in the middle 90s. And I would write down, pencil and paper, every single highlight, box score, etc. that was played on the show.
Oh, wow.
And the next logical thing you might think is that I muted it and then hosted SportsCenter in my bed. Not true. I just followed along with each subsequent SportsCenter. So it would be like the Magic got the Hornets by 8, and I'd be like, yeah, that all checks out right here. Shaq had 28 and 13. I can verify that. So maybe I wanted to be a PA. I don't know.
No. If you were putting up your own script, I think you probably. I don't want to tap into group dynamics with Chris not here, but I think asking to have your name on the show, however jokingly, in the backseat of a car with Stanford Steve, that's not a PA's mentality. That's an on-air mentality.
I swear to you, that was a real fight. And then to make it better, as people like us do, I try to make a joke. So at the end, I was like, and I want my name on the show. Clearly a joke. And Steve knew it was a joke. And now Steve's trying to play Switzerland. Like, I don't know. I don't even really remember. I don't want my name on the show.
I have a thing that the Switzerland thing has come up a lot for me in the last, we'll say 3 years. And the whole like, hey, I'm Switzerland, we're Switzerland, this, whatever, this Switzerland concept, like, and I don't want to get geopolitical. I feel like enough time's passed since World War II. But the idea of remaining neutral when one side is Nazis and the other side is not Nazis, like, I don't know that carries the discipline that people give it credit for. The neutrality, like we good people, we got friends, whatever. Like I don't know, but we don't need to talk politics. But
Okay.
I
I
understand. No, as a chat, listen, the whole using humor to diffuse. Are you? I've lost track of. Obviously the Long family comes up a fair amount on the show, and but siblings in the Macon house or no? Are you one of one?
It's a really good question, Randy, with a complicated answer.
Okay.
Um, Mom had two kids from a previous marriage. Dad had two
Mhm.
kids from a previous marriage. And
Mhm.
those four kids are all 20 years older than me. And then I am one of one from mom and dad. So I
Okay.
kind of got both things working.
So I'm just wondering about the peacemaker element because I that's where the humor comes from. I think from me is I I don't know if you're familiar with the Great Santini, the book, and then later the movie, but Pat Conroy wrote this book, and it was this overbearing military father figure, right? Robert Duvall played him in the movie, and my dad wasn't that that disciplined with us, but he tried to be, and my mom was always the buffer to try to like, no, they're not going to call you sir, no, we're not going to this, and no, he's not going to go to ROTC, and that sort of thing, and for me, when he would come down on when any of my parents, but mainly my dad, would come down on my sister or my brother or my mom, and if there was a fight, it was like I was like, oh hey, look at the clown, like that's where the humor came from to try to like we can stop this. This isn't that serious, and we can just move on. So that's where some of that comes from.
Yeah. Let me bring it down another notch. My mom died when I was 8. Okay. So
Oh, buddy.
unfortunately, we share not having mom around. And
Yeah,
so it was sort of just a coping mechanism. Hey, not everything is sad and terrible because I've got jokes.
you
And
do have jokes. You
and
do
uh
have
and
jokes.
it and it's led us here, we sell real estate and then we pop into the studio a couple times a week. You
It's
keep bringing
funny.
up C Long. This is really this is the audition for perhaps the own show. Maybe the Macon and Randy show.
M&R. I'll
Yeah.
take back seat there. We'll call it alphabetical, but we'll know
Oop,
why it's the way it is.
oop. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I the mom. I'm sorry about your mom. I think 8 years old is really really tough. I have a 10-year-old. That's what those. I don't know if you can see them here. That's what those balloons are. Now I'm
Yeah.
for the 10-year-old who just turned 10. You got to do two numbers now, and there's never a good time for bad things to happen. Kind of a broad statement, but my mom passed. I was 34, and I felt like I was getting screwed over. So the having it at 8, man, I'm really sorry to hear it. I do think though that like you said, it does form you in a way, and you have. I don't know you that well. The friendship is just blossoming, but I feel like you have given plenty of people plenty to be proud of in that. God, 36 minus 8, 28 years since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's very kind of you to say. Can we stick in the muck and sadness here? Can
Yeah, of
I
course.
can I take you through
As
your last 3 years?
as emotional gentlemen as we've just established,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Can I read you some things you said in the Katie Nolan pod?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to tell? So that was March of 21. I'll never. That was first week of March 21.
And we're coming up on 2 years. That's not
Yeah.
lost on me, like to the day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Jeez.
um, you got divorced March of 21 or thereabouts. That's when
Yep.
it was official.
Yeah.
During that process, you say you lose 30 pounds in a month when you're really going through it.
About 4 weeks. Yeah.
You're quarantined with your eventual ex-wife.
Uh-huh.
You quote Ted Lasso to her unironically, trying to
To
get
Kate.
through this.
Yeah. To Katie. Yeah.
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 You have a real deal Holyfield panic attack. You're
Yeah, dude.
parenting 3 kids. You're
Yeah.
living in an echo chamber of your own destabilizing thoughts,
Hmm.
and you're unable to visualize the future, and you say you're mourning the life you had. And
Yeah.
that was you said all these things to Katie a couple years ago on her pod, And, we can hit as much of that or as little as that as you'd like, but you were down bad and you were really courageous to share that you were down bad. And coming up on the 2 year anniversary of it, and the Randy Scott social feeds telling me that Randy's living his best life right now, I couldn't be any happier for you, sincerely. And everybody's
Yeah.
going through shit at some point in their life, and um,
Yeah.
some, maybe I wasn't at that point, but to hear you be so forthright and vulnerable, it was awesome. And to see you come out the other side smiling, um, it's awesome. It's life
Well,
affirming.
man, I appreciate that. And so I can answer another topic kind of while talking about this. Like my the way my life is constructed, like I live outside of Boston, which where I live is about 110 miles away from the studios in Bristol, Connecticut. Entirely different states. And this time of year, we're getting more snow in a couple nights. Like it gets a little dicey. But I did this because I was like you. We didn't have cable growing up. Can't hide money making. But I was a SportsCenter nerd, man. I mean, same deal. Kilborn, Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, Brett Haber, Robin Roberts, Charlie Steiner, Bob Lee, the General. I mean, it was these guys were all men and women, all let Linda Cohn. So I knew I wanted to do that. So I was working at Nesson up here. That was my truly my big break was working at Nesson, which has the Red Sox and the Bruins games, and I was doing some studio programming there for a couple of years, but I was month to month. So I knew I'm newly married at the time. I knew we wanted to start a family, and it's like, how do you start a family when you don't know if dad's gonna have a job next month? And that's how Nesson did things. Was like, you get your schedule for March probably today. The last couple of days of February, and if you were on it, you had a paycheck. If not, not, so uh, I hit up a friend of mine who worked for Fenway Sports Group and had helped Steve Levy um, get not married, a rehearsal dinner at Fenway Park. Pretty cool, right? And
Nice.
had been assigned to him as sort of the consigliere concierge, like anything they need to make this day go well, you do it. And Steve said it did when it went so well. And hey, Nick, my buddy Nick Gregorian, like if you need anything ever, here's your ticket from Steve Levy. And so that time period, I was looking at a local affiliate in Boston, actually where my ex-wife worked, the Fox affiliate up here, and they had an opening in their sports department. And I was like, all right, that's a paycheck, that's benefits, paternity leave, all these things that could make your life better if you're going to start a family. And then, or do you want to stay at Nesson if Nesson is viewed, if people at ESPN watch Nesson? And I didn't know that at the time. So Nick goes, call Steve Levy. I'm like, oh yeah, Nick, I'm just going to call Steve. He's like, no, he put us on an email. I made Levy laugh with something in the email. And Levy said, he's like, well, you got me laughing already. I'm in the office for the next hour. And I just happened to catch that. Like how often you catch an email with like a timestamp on it? And so I caught it, called him. He's like, send me your stuff. I put together a YouTube reel, send it to him. He's like, it's way too long. Cut this, cut that, cut that. I did what he told me to do. And he's like, all right. He goes, well, stay at Nesson and I'll walk this down the hall with your permission. Walk this down the hall. So he gave it to someone. And I was like, yes, Steve Levy, you can do that. Gave it to somebody in the talent office. And I got an audition and a job out of all that. And I say all that to say, like, we were building a life up here. I wasn't going to make my ex suddenly drive, instead of driving 20 minutes to work, drive an hour to work. Equidistant is not a whole lot there. It's kind of, you guys, I know you make fun of tech. Do you make fun of William and Mary?
No,
Old Bill and Mary? No. Even though
no.
don't they have a statue on campus whose butt is pointed toward Charlottesville by design? Isn't
I
that?
haven't heard that story.
Yeah.
Mr. Jefferson did attend William and Mary, so there's a little bit of mutual respect going on.
Okay. Okay. So it's kind of like the midway point between Bristol and up here is like Colonial Williamsburg. You don't want to live there. You might want to visit, get some peanuts, that sort of thing. But so I drive an hour 45 to work, and I'm stuck doing that now that the marriage is no longer the marriage because this is the only way I get to have my kids overnight. And number one with an absolute thumbtack was Sports Center if I could ever get there, but in a completely different list with the same level of severity was being a dad. I always wanted to. I think sometimes you're motivated by the things that you didn't get from your own parents. Sometimes the greatest lessons you can learn, and if it's in a marriage, if it's in a parenting relationship, anything, working relationship, sometimes you learn what you don't want, and or what you do deserve that you didn't get, or some of those things. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to be the dad in this way, in this way, in this way, and I've gotten to do it. I got to do it for with 3 kids. Like I said, for about 7 years before everything happened. So I felt so stuck. Like when I figured out what I figured out, and I figured out some things, I was like, well, I'm stuck. And I had all these buddies who were like, well, hey, now you can stop driving as far and you can go down to Connecticut and you can live in West Hartford where all the cool kids live. That's real, by the way. When Rosillo, I know you guys have them on and joke around. Like the West Hartford Enclave is a real sort of cool kids clubhouse there in Hartford County. And they were like, you can live down there. And I was like, no, I can't. So I wake up at 1:30 in the morning and I hit the road at 2:15, and I have to be in Bristol at 4, and we write the show for a couple hours, and then go to makeup and get dressed and all that, and then we're on the air. Red light comes on at 7, green light, and then
There you go.
do the show till 10, and then have a post show meeting and come back. And it worked for my life because my ex was a nighttime news anchor, so we always had the kids covered, and we had a great, wonderful woman as a nanny who allowed me to sleep a little bit when I got home in the afternoons, um, and we just had a well-oiled machine. But sometimes the machine has issues that you don't realize in the moment because you're sleep deprived and whatnot. And so to sell, listen, I don't know how the housing market was in Charlottesville, and I apologize, I'm all over the place in this answer, but it was real tough to buy and sell a house in the teeth of the pandemic. We're talking like July of 20, June, July 20.
Need a
Was
better agent, Randy. Not
well,
difficult
I
down
had a
here
good,
in the middle of Virginia.
I had a good agent. I could sell the house, no problem, but there were all cash offers coming in. It would,
Well, yes. Yes,
hey,
indeed.
buy, you get 15 minutes in this house, and then your offer's due 90 minutes later, that sort of thing, and remove your contingencies and all that stuff. And I wasn't willing to do that because, again, I don't know down there, but up here, an old house is considered on some historic register. I mean, the fact that this house is built in 37 is kind of a spring chicken comparatively. And this is my second house since the divorce because I was in a different town, and I had to be within 15 minutes of the school in order to have the kids overnight, and that was my drive. I was kind of jokingly calling myself Solo Dad O'Brien, but I I loved it, and I had a little school set up while the kids were quarantined. Like I got desks and teacher supplies from Amazon, and then we had this little room that was all set up so they could zoom in and all that stuff. And I was like, all right, I can do this. I can do this. But you ever feel imposter syndrome?
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
time.
So I one night was like, I think I kind of realized I was lying to myself a little bit. Like you don't have this as under control as you think you do. And they were all sleeping upstairs, and I was downstairs in this little 4-bedroom house where I'd love your insight. Legally, there was no door on this bedroom. I don't know if it was a bedroom, but it was sold to me as a 4-bedroom house. And I was in the basement, had a closet and a window though, and
2 points of egress.
yeah, egress.
There you
and
go.
and I just felt like I was having a heart attack, and I was 38, and I was like, I don't have anyone to call.
Mm.
I don't have anyone to call. I was in the teeth of this legal fight, and I can't call my ex because it'll be used against me as a mode of like he can't handle this. Um, it was the middle of I couldn't, I had nobody to call, and I was 110 miles from my friends at work and all this stuff, and I had no family in the area. Everybody's down in Virginia at the time, and I was like, I had this thought of like, would my oldest know what to do if he found me? And that was scary. So because the piggybacking thought on that was, would it be so bad? Like
Mm.
and that was as close. And I know Chris has touched on some of this, post retire, NFL retirement stuff. And I was like, and that scared me too. So in addition to being someone my entire life where I was like watching these sports centers in the 90s and being like, I can see myself doing that. Like, and then, okay, what's the step below that? Well, it's probably another TV job. And I kind of mapped out these things I needed to do, go to a school that has a journalism program. And Marty Hudlow
Yeah.
at NBC 29 there,
Yeah.
WVIR.
Yeah. Hudloff, if we're being
Oh,
technical about
okay.
it.
That could be
Yeah.
why I didn't get the job. But he,
No, you were going to
dude,
be here?
oh 04, oh 04, I came down. He made me take a drug test at UVA. Like I thought I had this job. I was like, 2 hours from home. I was you're right up 29. I could zip home to Vienna whenever I needed. Like I was so excited, and he's so laid back and affable, and like his timetable's his timetable. And I have nothing bad to say other than he led me on a little bit, but that could have been the news director. But I had to take like a local Virginia government test and all that. Like I thought I was in. I really did. And instead I ended up in Lawton, Oklahoma at the time. But
Well, because you got popped for a positive
no,
cocaine test, or like,
no,
what's the end of that
that's a
story?
whole no. The story is they were like, okay, I'm a terrible podcast guest. Do you remember the show? Did you remember the show Dream Job on ESPN?
Do I remember the show Dream Job? I got it bolded right here in my notes.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So I did it twice.
04, the year you graduated Northwestern.
Yeah, I did it.
Ever heard of it?
I made it so far that year. I made it into the room with Stuart Scott where I was in the final 30 and they cut it to 10 for the show. And they took a woman, Whitney Scott from Oakton, Virginia, neighboring town. And as soon as she was called third, I was like, that's my time. I'm out.
Same last name. Brutal.
I was driving across the GW Bridge, driving back to Virginia, and I had an offer from KSWO in Oklahoma. And I called Marty. I called a 434 and I was like, hey, I have this offer. I didn't get Dream Job. What are you guys doing? He goes, I still don't know the timetable. So do what you got to do. Just sort of laid it out. And I was like, I got to go. He's like, I understand. And they ended up hiring like 3 months later. So I'm glad I went. And I think they hired a guy named Grant Lotus, who I ended up working with in Fort Myers of all places a couple years later. But I went out to Lawton and Matt Barry was there. He's the number 2 there. So I was number 3 in the sports department. And I learned a lot from Matt Barry, and here we are working together in ESPN all these years later. But I don't know
Sir, the question was, how happy are you after going through a hard time in your life?
Very. I'm happy. I'm still. There's always going to be a level of like, what the hell happened, and how did I not see, the state of play? But I'm better now. Go to therapy. I don't get as, everything has to be perfect. It's like, okay, if if we slide bedtime by 15 minutes, we're good. Slide dinner by this time, good. If you had a bath 2 nights ago, let me smell your hair. That, like, we're doing that sort of stuff a little bit and getting by. But it is a start. I can't believe it's been 2 years. I can see things. That's what I was gonna say is I can see things a little better. I always at that point a couple years ago I had lost my ability to see anything for myself in the future, and that terrified me because it was like, well, if you can't see what you want to do you even want to be around here to just tread water and do that? And so when you start having those thoughts, you're like, well, I got to talk to somebody about it, and that helped. It was a huge help. And I'm not trying. These aren't false flowers I'm laying at you guys' feet, but the Katie Nolan pod, again, hour 45 each way to work. So I'm listening to a ton of podcasts. I'm listening to Russillo. Because of Chris's hits on Russillo, hey, he gets his own thing. I'm listening to him. And, very light, Dr. Fax and Cowboy and present company included. Like, the conversations are generally light, but there are references, especially with former players, where Chris says, like, I wasn't doing well. And for somebody like that, strong like bull, rich as hell, obviously. But somebody who's achieved all this success, to open that door a little bit, like, I found myself gravitating toward these podcasts, and it just makes you feel better. It's not a misery loves company thing. It's like you're not as isolated. Like, you have a way of walling off your own experience and being like, I'm the only one in the world who is dealing with this. I'm the only one in the world who's doing this. And it's such a lonely thing. And when you see far more successful, far more accomplished people going through some of the same things or feeling some of the same way, you're like, oh, great. I'm not weak for, thinking this and feeling this way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. Didn't uh, I didn't have a plan. Thank you for sharing that part of it. I
Yeah.
do have a plan, have a delightful plan, but that part of it, I'm grateful for you talking about it a little bit. I, you know, the Ryan has some life advice.
Yeah.
Simmons does little parent corner. Let's talk dad stuff because when my daughter was born, January 2021, um, I had never gotten up at 6:45 with any regularity in my entire life.
Yeah.
1:30 in the morning is a different animal, um, but it gave me Randy Scott in my life until she got
Yeah.
old enough to say Coco Melon. And then we were on to something else, unfortunately, and I can't wait to get you back at some point. But there was a lot of Randy Scott, which is great, and now she's really good at saying things like basketball and football and go Who's
Yes.
and things of
Yes.
that sort. But let me share something with you. I was I was on watch, and I'm a vigilant dad because I don't know how to be a dad. So just throw all of your energy into it. I
Hmm.
guess was has been my mo, and I was on watch for a big fall from my daughter, blood, tears, everything, and I was messed up. And you mentioned therapy, boom, right. Hey, guy, you can't be any more vigilant, and things are happening on your watch. Are you cut out for this sort of stuff?
Oh man.
And and kids are resilient, man, and they heal quickly.
Hmm.
And I had the proper perspective that a fall, even if it's a bad fall, there are worse things going on
Yeah.
with kids in this world. But it sincerely screwed me up to the point
Mm.
where I needed to reframe how I was going to approach this whole deal. And
Yeah.
again, she's fine. We'll never ever remember it. Heck, I don't remember things before like age 10.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
and it's been the greatest thing in the world. And now we have a 6 month old as well. And people say, I'm curious about this. People say that the day the kid was born was like the best day of their life. I mean, that day was terrifying. That that day was low key awful. I mean, labor
Yeah.
is a riot,
It was probably
and
pretty tough for your wife too. Yeah.
and then they hand you the kid, and you don't know what to do,
Yeah.
and then they give you the kid to take home, still not knowing what to do
Sure.
whatsoever. But
Sure.
like every subsequent day is the best day because it's
Yeah.
this morning. It's bye bye dada, and then she jumps off the couch where she used to. We limit screen time. Don't worry about that. We used to watch SportsCenter AM. Now we're watching whatever the
Yeah.
hell.
That's got to get corrected. But yeah.
And then she jumps off the couch and with a big hug before I walk out the door to go talk to Randy Scott.
Uh,
And it's just the best. This is not a well formed question, but one.
is it a question? I feel like it's just
We're
we're
just
just dry,
filibustering here
drafting we're just drafting off each other. How many
on
do
the
you have? You
Greenlight
have two.
Pod.
You have two kids.
I have two kids. Well, there's a
Yeah.
question: is three the magic number?
No, I think two is the magic number. I love my third though, and his name's Ryan, and he has so
Good
much
save, Randy. Good
personality.
save.
Yeah, quiet number three. He is he's so funny, and he's so like an amalgamation of everybody. He's just this perfect like. He's got a little bit of ex-wife's sense of humor, a little bit of my sense of humor. His brother and sister too. Like that's what's cool to see is the fingerprints because they're gonna look. Your kids are gonna look like either you or your wife, and to see the personality fingerprints of the siblings. Like your oldest is your daughter. Do you have a son as
Yep.
well, or two daughters?
Correct.
Okay,
Son.
so your
Yep.
oldest is a daughter, and so she'll have greater fingerprints if you decide to go for three on the third, and you'll notice fingerprints on your son as well. So, but I think too, like, oh man, it was Jerry Madelon, who was at ESPN for a really long time, a great producer, and then CP, and then boss there, and he was like, congratulations. He goes, you're going to learn, though. This is when my daughter was born. She's my second. He was like, 1 is like none. 2 is like 20.
Yeah.
And he wasn't wrong, but you at least have 2 parents ideally in the house to deal with the 2, right? You can, go one man-to-man defense. And then when you add the third, you're just like, someone is not going to get the level of attention that they're used to. That's the problem. And because you've been an attentive dad, you've been like you said, as vigilant as possible, but you just have to split your time here moving forward. There are going to be times where you're 2-on-1, 3-on-1, and the oldest, who's used to, I can get dad, beck and call, 100% of dad, laser focus all the time. Now you're going to have one eye on her, one eye on the other kid who's climbing off the couch to jump off, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, a friend who just had 3 said it's not zone defense. It remains man-to-man defense, and you just let one go. You hope for the best.
Yeah,
it's still man-to-man defense.
Yeah, you hope it's Russell Westbrook out beyond the 3-point line. Just let him loose.
You said on IG recently you only get 18 summers with these kiddos.
Yeah.
That hit me. That hit me because I told a friend who's a newer parent, hey, these parents who say it goes by too quickly, fuck that. This takes forever, man. I mean, these days are long, and give yourself some credit for getting through.
Yeah.
And granted, we're 2 under 2. We're in the weeds.
Oh my God.
But I would like to keep the 2-year-old right where she is forever.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. What are you?
That's a good sweet spot.
What are you called? Was there? Are you dad now? Are they old enough? You're dad.
I'm dad. I'm dad across the board, and that's what stinks is the youngest drafts off of what the oldest does. So as soon as the oldest started calling me dad, I went from dad. We skipped daddy with the youngest and went straight to dad. And now my 10-year-old, I'm learning sus and mid and some of these things that he learns at school. So he called me bruh once. Like
Wow.
we have FIFA 23. We have FIFA 20. He got it for his birthday, FIFA 23 on PlayStation. And he beat me. So he likes to construct ways where he's going to win. And so he goes, Dad, you pick why don't you be Scotland? Cause he's like, he knows Scotch, Irish. He's like, you be Scotland. I'm like, great. He goes, and I'll just be, I don't know, Argentina. And then we'll play. And it's 6-0. And Messi has 5 goals before half. And he's like, bruh, you are awful at this. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, he won't tell me what any of the buttons do. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, because we've been playing on Nintendo Switch this whole time, and the controller's about, yay big, and I can dominate pretty well on that. And now we're on a full-size thing I haven't played since probably college. But yeah, you get called bruh, and you're like, oh my God, this kid who puts stuff in his hair now, before school. We got to build in a little time for that.
When he says, rando, get off the sticks, maybe it's time to sit the kid down.
That's going to be tough. That's where I can start. Because I'm a verbal assassin, but not for my own kids. That's for sure.
Let me list you my my SportsCenter anchors. I don't know if I can quite get to a Rushmore as I've only written down 4. I think Eisen was my 1. I think Eisen was my 1.
Okay.
Which you don't hear all the time. And then it was Kenny Mayne. And then it was Dan Patrick. I feel comfortable with those 3.
Pretty white Mount Rushmore, but go on.
Oh, I'm sorry, SportsCenter in the 80s and 90s. We're calling Bob Lee the general for crying out loud. I wonder where that came from. Okay.
Dukes
but I digress.
Go on. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Kilborn, that vibe. It was a good vibe.
It's a dry vibe for sure.
And that's why I'm so excited to be your friend, because I haven't had a SportsCenter anchor friend since Steiner and I lost touch. We used to be.
Stop. Were you in touch with Steiner?
No,
he's a good guy.
That's a joke. Yeah. It's a joke I've written here.
You're asking for my Mount Rushmore, or is this just
you sort of already listed it. Well, why are you questioning my interview style, Randy? I've never done this before, all right?
Yeah, I know. Now, I heard the first one after Chris had left, and you explored the space really well. And Cowboy and Matt, they applauded your leadership skills. Like, you had a plan. You were a man with a plan.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
You said you were. We communicate via Twitter DMs. You asked me 7 times whether or not this was on video. I replied in the affirmative every time. You said you were irrationally excited for this, and I was irrationally nervous. Both because you're making people nervous. That's got to be a trip. Here's another
Well,
trip.
I don't
Do
want to
you
do that.
ever do you ever think about SportsCenter being on in airports and everybody's hotel room
Yeah.
and LeBron throwing it on the morning after the game, Brady, Rogers, all these guys are tuning into Randy. Do you ever
Well,
stop and think about that?
so I no, because you really are in a bubble in Bristol, and then I'm dad when I'm here. My kids could not care less what I do for work, and that's kind of wild. Like my dad was a naval aviator. My dad was at Top Gun. Like he was Billy. We're allowed to cuss.
Yeah, fuck shit.
Yeah, Billy Badass, but you don't have to celebrate it. But
Okay.
yeah, he's out there, and and I didn't. I grew up being like, yeah, dad flies planes, ho hum. So I'm getting a taste of my own medicine here. But then you go, like you said, airports. Like you go through TSA screening, or you check in at a hotel somewhere, or you get outside of that bubble, and for me, I haven't been there long enough where it's like, bang, for most people. But sometimes it's like, where do I know you from? Or you're that ESPN guy, or you're that sport. And that's like, anybody who says that gets annoying. Van Pelt probably gets people interrupting him while he's eating. I don't get that. So I still geek out about it. Draymond Green watches. I know that because he used to, when Sage Steele was on the morning show, he'd message Sage and be like, you tell your boy to, blah, blah, blah. Like if I said something about Draymond that wasn't complimentary, he would get back to me pretty quickly, which was wild. And then we know that President Obama watched, and like you hear about that sort of thing. And it's never any like he watched and he said this. It was more just like he knows who we are. He watches all the time, that sort of thing. And you're just like, that makes no sense at all.
Take us through how strange a gig this really is mechanically.
I mean, it's going to be strange to someone who has never been around it before, but you've been around microphones and the traveling circus of play-by-play at basketball games and football games and all that good stuff. So I'm trying to think here. Like, get there at 4. The rundown is in, and they've worked on it overnight. There's like an overnight crew that takes the highlights and the post-game sound, hands it off, and puts a skeleton rundown in for the morning show producer. He or she gets in and says, okay, I want this, 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 and this, and you kind of move it around. So by the time my co-anchor Gary Streisky, or my co-anchor David Lloyd, or my co-anchor Christine Alexander, or Kelsey Riggs, or whomever gets in, we know the things have been assigned, and we can jump in and we can start writing. And what we're responsible for writing is anything on camera, most VOs that are just VOs, not highlights. And then we'll have to get in and look at interview questions. There's usually 99% of the time a segment producer who's been in touch with, Coley Harvey at Cincinnati Medical Center, or someone far lighter, that LaFonso Ellis had a College Game Day, in Gonzaga or at Spokane or something. And you can look at those questions, and just, there are people that I've worked with who are comfortable getting in a little later and just doing it cold. Not really looking at some of the scripts that are written by other people, and just being like, yeah, I can either translate it on the fly, or I know what the point is. Like Carl Ravitch, when he did SportsCenter, didn't use a teleprompter, and I don't know
Wow.
how. I don't know how he did that, but he was so comfortable with it. Still doesn't really use one. And I've gotten to do like one show with him, and he saw that I'd written things in the prompter. He goes, "You've been here how long?" I was like, 4 years. He goes, "You should be off prompter by now." I was like, "Oh my god!" And then as we're getting counted in, like 5, 4, 3, 2, and then he'd go. And so I'm like, ashen as I'm talking to him. But the stats and info group, like all the jokes that come at SportsCenter, where it's like, how do you guys find these stats? Where it's, that was LeBron's first triple double on a Tuesday under a waning moon, and you're like, well, we have stats and info group that comes up with this stuff, but they write in a sometimes they write in a decidedly left brain way, and you've got to massage it a little bit for how it's going to read on the air. Sometimes, most times it's in perfect shape, and you're off and running. But what we don't write out is a shot sheet for a highlight. And that's one of the reasons I love the morning show. Is it's a ton of highlights. It's all reacting to the night before. It's part of the reason the show went away during the pandemic, though. When games stopped, what were we going to react to? Van Pelt and those guys came up with Senior Night, which was amazing, and The Last Dance provided some content. But for us, we didn't have anything to react to, so our show went away for for several months. But the shot sheet is in like landscape form, right? It comes like this, and there'll be three columns. So the left column sets up the play. The middle column is what is going out on the air. It's what the viewer sees, and the right column is the result. So, for example, it'd be UVA at North Carolina.
Okay. Easy.
Or no, that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. UVA
21-6. You pick one of the 6 losses, but okay.
That's fine. We can go back a couple years. UVA against UMBC, and then the middle would be but it'd be second quarter. Kihei Clark. Second quarter UVA up 6. Middle column Kihei Clark from the left wing for 3. It's good, and then the right column would say that was his 6-3 of the game. I mean, we know that's a month's worth of threes, but whatever it is, it's something like that. And that's what sets it up. So you take these stats packets that you get from Stats and Info when you get into work that have little paragraphs, like 1 paragraph each of every game that's in the show. And then you take that nugget where it's like, hey, Clark has hit 60% of his threes over his last week. So what they tell us first week of working there is don't play by play the highlight. Give some context, give a quote, give a stat, give something that the viewer can't literally see for themselves if they're watching. And what they've told us in the morning show over the last several years is give them some reason. If they're getting ready for work, getting the kids ready, and the show's on in the background, give them a reason to crane their neck back in the room and watch. So whether that's a dated reference, I'm pretty good at those, a movie quote, a song lyric of some sort, something like that to just not literally play by play what you're seeing. And then it takes me a couple hours to do that, and then you get over and get some coffee and get dressed and get makeup and go.
Let me give you something to throw in there. Like,
yes,
Kihei Clark hits his 6-3. Oh shit! I think that would really get the people's attention.
I got my phone out. I was ready to put some stuff in here for my friend. That's gonna friend.
No, that's when we start texting. That's when I'll start throwing you references.
Yeah.
Okay, you're the man. We'll have to catch up like Vienna Inn. Some loaded dogs.
What do you know about the Vienna Inn?
I'm Virginia through and through. I got people in Northern Virginia. It does feel like a different state from actual Virginia, but mad respect. We're still in the same Commonwealth.
It's a hell of a dismount here, Meg.
Well, listen, we're not quite done because I need to draft Randy's with you, famous Randy's.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Famous Randy's? Okay.
That was in the DM that you didn't read very carefully when I said yes. It's on.
No, there's a lot in the DM that I feel like I've taken the off the field stuff and kept it off the field, and I'm trying to feign surprise to make my list and my draft all that more impressive. Like, wow, he didn't prepare, but
you're a professional. Randy, adjective meaning sexually aroused or excited, as in as nervous as a randy adolescent on a hot date. So I guess
That's great, buddy. That's great, friend.
You don't see a ton of Randys, but at the same time, so I had Macon Bacon my entire youth. Most people don't probably know the definition of Randy. The youths, they're not giving you a hard time for Randy.
Far enough removed from Austin Powers to where that's not a thing. But that was in there. It was do I make you horny? Do I make you Randy? Yeah.
Okay.
But we can do so Macon, verb, to produce something or create, as in making your guest feel attacked, like something like that, like bop bop bop, something like that.
You got it.
That's good.
Okay.
All right.
Well, this is it's not my show, it's Chris's show. Because it's Chris's show, I'm going to take the first pick. We'll go A, B. We're going 6 Randys deep, 3 apiece. The first overall pick in famous Randys is the Macho Man. It's Randy Savage. And present company excluded. Present company excluded. I go Randy Scott 1-1. But the Macho Man is hard to beat. You're on the clock, sir.
Is it just you and I?
Yeah. Oh,
drafting?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. So, okay, and then are we snake drafting?
We're not snaking. This is AB. You
Mm,
can't. I can't give you two Randys in a row. Your name's Randy. You
I'll
would win
go.
the draft.
Well, there's a Randy that's off the board that would have been on the board maybe 10 years ago, but uh, let's go. I'll go Randy Travis. I'll go Randy Travis.
That's a great pick.
That's yep,
Um,
Randy Travis.
on my board, gonna forever and ever, amen, and
Three
all
wooden
that good
crosses,
stuff.
whole thing.
Yep,
Yep.
you got it. Um, okay. Um, you might take issue with this because I'm going fictional, but again, it's Chris's show. Randy Marsh with my second pick of South Park fame is a terrific Randy.
I thought this was America. Yeah. Okay. All right. All
The
right.
wheelbarrow,
Yeah,
everything.
the wheelbarrow. I feel like that gets referenced a fair amount on your show
It
as it
does.
pertains to everything from like a third down call or a fourth down call or a bet. You know,
You're right.
like you guys are like, yeah, I was betting on some Austrian tennis, and I just put them in the wheelbarrow, and I just went out
it's
after it.
it's on the whiteboard here. Just try to fit in Randy Marsh wheelbarrow wherever possible. Once a show.
That allows me to then see. I was worried that Randy Johnson was going to be taken, but
The
he's
big
not.
unit.
Yep.
Speaking of big
Yep.
units, yeah.
Yes.
That's a really good pick. I probably
Yeah.
would have gone there. I'll round it out with Randy Moss. Throw me the damn ball.
Nah, that's a good one.
One of
That's a really good one.
one of your colleagues.
We're not allowed. They've softened on it at work over the last about 10 years, which coincides with my time there, where you're allowed to be a fan. You're allowed to like I'm a Washington Capitals fan, I'm a Raiders fan. So you're allowed to show a little bit of that on the air without besmirching other teams necessarily, right?
Excuse me.
So
Would you say right for Caps? Did you say Raiders?
Las Vegas Raiders, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Oh yeah. Buddy, my dad is a Chargers fan still, and so watching games, and I was born in San Diego, and as we move around military wise, you could always see the Raiders because they're one of these national brands, even though we didn't have making Gunter cable money. And so I said to Dad, I was like, "Who are these guys in silver and black?" And he's like, "Oh, they're the bad guys." That's what he just waved it off. He's like, "They're the bad guys. We don't like them." And then I'm 5 years old when Bo is Bo, and I'm like, "That's it. I'm hooked." Like Nintendo, I could play them. You could be 75 long on defense. You could be 34 Jackson on offense. Like, forget it. That was it. So in the Jackson vein, segue like a mall
Mm.
cop, Randy
Mm.
Jackson. Randy Jackson with my last pick.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a
That's a
big
good
yes from
lineup for you.
big yes from me, dog.
Travis, Johnson, Jackson for you. I went Savage, Marsh, Moss. So I win the draft, but not by a lot. I mean, that is pretty embarrassing. You lose a Randy draft, but I had the first pick. You were behind the eight ball.
I was quick story. I was underemployed in 2010, living in Tampa, Florida. Recession hit that area of Florida pretty hard. Three-person
Coconuts? Are you
sport.
going to talk about your tight 10 at Coconuts?
We don't. Nope. Nope. We could save that for my second trip.
Okay.
Like, listen, in the summer, you guys are gonna be thin on some content, some guests, and all that
Well,
stuff. So
and
yes,
when
I will
when
come back. Yes, I will talk about Northern versus Southern Virginia. And
and when Chris
yes,
goes to Tanzania again in 2 years, we'll be delighted to get you back.
2 years. I've done that.
Which
I've
is
done that well. Okay. Well, I had a whole story about drugs and how I didn't
oh
try any marijuana products until I was in my fourth decade of life. But that's a story for somebody who will appreciate it. So this story that I've already lost the train of thought
Tampa. Sorry,
was
Tampa.
being underemployed. Got married in April of 10, and literally I had collected some unemployment. I was cobbling together like temp jobs and things, and the stand-up comedy career hadn't taken off like I'd hoped. So I talked to our wedding photographer because I'd hired him and he had to talk to me, and we were just kind of like BSing about things. And he goes, I have a wedding in Sarasota next week. He goes, when are you going on your honeymoon? Because I could use a grip, so to speak. I'll pay you a couple $100. You can haul the gear. And I was like, well, no, we are. My dumbass. I was like, oh, I gotta go to Antigua. Like, gotta go to this resort. Got my honeymoon. And he was like, all right. He goes, that's a real shame. He goes, because this is gonna be a hell of a wedding. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you a wrestling fan? And I was like, what, like pro wrestling? He's like, yeah. And he goes, what, how old are you? What did you grow up? And I was like, yeah, wrestling fan. He goes, it's Randy Savage's wedding. And I was like,
Wow.
what? And he goes, with Boffo. But yeah, he's getting married, his second marriage, third marriage, whatever it was. And he's getting married in Sarasota. It's on the beach, and you should see this guest list. And I was like,
Oh
what?
man.
So he would have paid me a couple $100 to set up lights and all that stuff for that. And unfortunately, tragically, I think
Yeah.
Randy was gone within the year probably in that car accident. But yeah, that's my brush with your first draft pick, man.
Damn. Well, hey, many more stories where those came from. In the words of Randy Scott, I love a story with a good middle. There were there were several of those told by both of us here this morning, and I can't thank you enough, man. You're gonna get a text from a 434 number within the next 12 hours.
You better follow up on it.
Oh, I sure will. It'll be pleasant. Some witticisms, humility, etc. We're gonna get this thing off the ground. Randy Scott of ESPN fame. God damn it! I mean, we make it an hour, and then I stumble over the word fame.
3,
keep
2.
It in. Hey,
keep it in.
I'm teaching C Long a lesson. Who will cut now and again. Hey, we're human.
Really good though. The edits.
Thank you.
Good. You can hardly see them anymore. I will. Can I make it even more awkward? Just one last thing. Every time the show starts and it's cowboy, like he has like a guttural sort of pervy, like yeah, and you guys keep that in every show. Yes, we do. Every show, cowboy, like that. Yeah. There's that like lean back from Long where you're just like, this is a friendship that might be more.
Yeah, you're right about that, Randy.
Yeah, it's there.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Listen to the full podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast streaming platforms. Wherever you want to get the podcast, you can get the podcast. Pretty simple. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Podcasts get pretty wild. This is real tame.